First, we want to celebrate those who are currently fostering children. We have some people in the building. We also hope to bring greater awareness for the need for more people to consider taking on that role in the life of a child. But today we're going to hear from a few people. A young woman with a powerful voice and message, with lived experience as a foster youth. We'll hear about their journey to find healing and acceptance in the foster care system, eventually finding that support with her foster parents. Equally as important, our current and former foster parents, and we'll hear from one today as well. She opened her heart by opening her home, choosing to give a child the gift of love, and eventually becoming her adoptive mother. And if anyone in our audience is thinking about becoming a foster parent, we also have our wonderful advocates here today and our voluntary agency partners who can give you valuable information, support, resources to join this coalition. And also to thank our two keynote speakers. So Karen Priscelli-Keogh is Secretary to the Governor, Governor Kathy Hochul, and one of the highest ranking officials in the state, who graciously recorded remarks for us today about her own personal journey as a foster and adoptive parent. She was so looking forward to joining us here today, but she got pulled away with pressing matters. But she's so passionate about the work, she wanted to share her thoughts with us, and she did so with a message to us, so we'll see that shortly. We're also so grateful to be joined by Jamerica Haynes-Lewis, a former foster youth and former USA Ambassador Miss 2021, who is a journalist and activist and owns her own communications firm. Incredibly impressive, joining us all the way from Colorado. So she's become an incredible advocate and a mentor for children in foster care, as she once was. So we're grateful to both of our keynote speakers for being willing to share their incredible stories, and we thank them in advance. We'd also like to thank the many dedicated caseworkers and supervisors across the state for being such amazing advocates and providing critical resources for our children and families. You all keep families together and make sure children are protected and cared for, and we thank you for that. And to our authorized voluntary agencies, we have some of those in the room. We can't do this work without you. Whether it be caring for these young people in residential programs or working to recruit more foster and adoptive families, we are so proud to call you our partners. Since I became acting commissioner here at OCFS, I've had the good fortune to visit many of these programs and their youth. I've spoken to both leadership and staff. They provide care and compassion to children who really need it the most. As noted in our New York State's Family First Prevention Plan, many of you know our mission and goals here at OCFS, our focus must be on strengthening families by providing them with supports and resources they need to care for their own children. Our new mandated reporter training's overarching theme is just that. You can support a family without having to report a family. Today's event is a celebration of foster families and their important place in our mission to keep children safe. But as you may know, it is OCFS's priority to recognize and address the historic inequities in our child welfare system and its disproportionate impact on historically oppressed communities. This is where foster families can be the most useful, as an often temporary refuge for these children. You can be a conduit for a child returning to their family in situations where parents just needed some respite and or support. We know that Black and brown families are far more likely than white families to experience the removal of their children when involved in the child welfare system. Also, youth from the LGBTQ+ communities are overrepresented in our foster care system. By broadening the experiences and diversity of foster families, we'll be better equipped to address the unique needs of each child and one day help them return to families that can support them. This is an extension of the upstream prevention strategies OCFS is utilizing to not only make sure our children are safe and protected, but to empower families and give them the tools that they need to independently raise their children and provide for their well-being. In fact, many times foster families work alongside a child's parents, making sure that child knows they are still loved, but that their family just needs a little assistance and they can go back home. At the end of last year, there were 13,000 children in foster care in New York State. Of these children, about 36% were placed in the care of relative foster parents, and 50% with a non-relative foster parent. The remaining 14% of children are placed in congregate care and other types of placements. Although OCFS has been leading an effort to prioritize kinship care in addition to foster care with the goal of reunification, it's not always possible for a variety of reasons, as you all know. It's at this point that foster parents play a critical role as primary caregivers and nexus of support for children who've been impacted by abuse and maltreatment. Even in these situations, being removed from their family can still result in additional trauma. Foster families can be instrumental in helping children find a sense of security and belonging at a time when that can be difficult. Children will always need necessities like food and clothing, education, healthcare. But it's equally important to create a warm and welcoming environment where they are encouraged to learn, lean into their dignity, pursue their interests, and reach their goals. No matter what role a foster parent ultimately plays in a child's life, our speakers today will tell you that it can be the most rewarding and fulfilling responsibility you ever take on. I'm just so excited for the rest of the program, so we'll get to it. First, we'll hear from our Secretary to the Governor, Karen Priscilli-Keough. Once again, the Secretary is proud to share her journey as a foster and adoptive parent by video with us today. So we'll start that video.
Good morning. My name is Karen Priscilli-Keough, and I'm Secretary to Governor Kathy Hochul. I'm happy to be here today to lend my voice to an initiative that should be important to all of us, investing in the well-being and safety of New York's most vulnerable children. I'm so sorry I couldn't be with you in person today as planned. I want to first thank Acting Commissioner Suzanne Miles-Gustave for the invitation and today's speakers for their commitment to foster care and adoption. This issue is personal for me. Almost 20 years ago, my husband and I became foster parents to our lovely daughter, Jessica, before adopting her. It was and is an incredible journey for our family. Adoption was something I had long been open to and considered, and I knew my now husband was the one when he wholeheartedly agreed early in our relationship to adopt as well. When we decided to pursue adoption, we didn't fully understand that part of that journey would include fostering Jessica and all that meant. Fortunately, we had a lot of support and guidance from the foster care agency we worked with, Little Flower, the City of New York, as well as COAC, the Council on Adoptable Children, who certified us as foster care parents and matched us with Jessica. The foster care certification process itself was a gift in terms of understanding ourselves better and deepening our commitment to each other as a couple. We looked forward to weekly classes and to this day stay in touch with the amazing Janae Belson, the social worker who matched us with Jessica. What I've learned over these last 20 years confirmed what I thought to be true. When you open your home and invest in a child in foster care, you're not just offering them a place to stay, you're offering them hope and possibility. You're providing stability and safety and the much needed consistency we all need to feel secure in our family relationships and as individuals. Simply put, when you become a foster parent, you are helping a young person reach their God-given potential. I recognize that while my husband and I adopted our daughter from foster care, many children are reunited with their families. As a foster parent, you may play a role in helping to sustain that relationship. Foster parents sometimes support the child's parents as well, offering them the support they need to work through their challenges. When safe to do so and with support from your caseworker, some foster care parents offer a time when the parent can help put the child to bed at night, or read to them, or visit them in school, or even invite the parents to join them for a meal. Fostering a child can sometimes mean fostering a family. Our own family worked through very complicated dynamics over the years with Jessica's birth family, with the support of counselors, friends, and our extended family. And I will tell you, one of the true joys of my life was to have Jessica's birth and adoptive families show up together to support her when she performed with the theater group in high school, a day she and we will never forget. Becoming foster parents to Jessica not only changed her life, it profoundly changed our lives too. My husband and I believe and regularly remark that the best thing we ever did as a couple was to bring Jessica into our lives. Sometimes well-meaning friends and family will say how lucky Jessica was to join our family. And our immediate response is always, no, we're the lucky ones. We started our foster care and adoption journey looking to fill a child's life with love. And Jessica has done the same for us many times over. I encourage all New Yorkers to bring this joy, security, and love to a special child's life by becoming a foster or adoptive parent. Thank you again for inviting me to speak with you today, and please consider taking the leap to change not only a child's life, but yours too.
For her commitment and her powerful message. We thank her so much for being part of this day. But I'd now like to introduce you to someone who could join us in person. Our next keynote speaker. Her experience as a child in foster care has made her a talented, driven, and fearless advocate for children and families in crisis, and how they both need support, sometimes just in different ways. Please join me in welcoming Jamerica Haynes Lewis.
Good morning, everyone. How are you today?
Good morning.
Good. I didn't sound very enthusiastic. How are y'all today?
Morning.
Good. That's great. Thank you all for being here this morning. I was talking to some of the leadership team about how this is my first time in Albany. I am from Seattle, Washington, and I currently live in Colorado. And my first time visiting New York was actually in New York City, and that was in 2007. So it's great to be back in the state. Being here, it is what I thought it would be like, very green, very lush, and cold. Before I came, I had checked out the weather to see what it would be like, and it said it was supposed to be in the mid-70s. And then I arrived, and it was like, oh, okay. So it's really been great being here with my son and I, and growing up in the Northwest, it was quite an adventure. My family was actually originally from Detroit, Michigan, and due to being in the military, my grandmother's husband, they moved all the way from Michigan to Tacoma, Washington, and that is where I was born. I was the middle child of 5 children, and growing up, life was chaotic, to be frank with you all. A lot of times we were in crisis, whether it was moving from home to home, or just not having our basic necessities met, whether that was food, clothing, the guidance that we needed from an active and present parent. My mother had suffered from substance abuse, as well as some other issues that prevented her from parenting. After some time of just living like that, my siblings and I went into foster care. And for me, it was a confusing time, and I do remember that day where we went into care. It seemed like an ordinary day, and I remember walking downstairs and I didn't see my mother, but I did see 3 adults standing in our living room. I remember there were 2 officers and a woman, and I remember they were all white, and it was just very shocking because we usually didn't have white people in our home like that, so I didn't know who they were. But before I knew it, I was being transported in a patrol car to the other side of town. My 2 oldest siblings, I presumed they went somewhere else, and later I found out they went with family. And my younger sister and I, we went to a foster home. And at the time, I didn't know that what I was going to was a foster home. I remember being scared as well as hot. It was August of 1991. And I remember I was wearing corduroy pants, a winter sweater, and pink snow boots. So those were the only things I had, were just the clothes on my back. And as I was walking to the front of the door of the house, there was this petite elderly woman. She was African American like me, and she had her hair in a high ponytail and essentially a muumuu. And when she looked at me, she said, "Hi, Jamerica." And I remember just feeling so safe, for the first time in my life, and it almost felt as if I had came alive. It's one of the first times I remember someone saying my name, and it just made me feel like an actual human being versus someone just surviving. And later that night, Mrs. Johnson, my new foster mom, as well as my foster dad, Mr. Johnson, who we fondly call Papa, they gave us a meal, a warm bath, and I remember just how peaceful it was. And Mrs. Johnson had also did my hair, which was halfway done, so she proceeded to take out the extensions that were in my hair and just was able to do it in a way that I felt safe and secure and put together. For the next 5 years, I would live with the Johnsons, and it was such a profound experience in my life. It gave me an opportunity to be a part of the family, to really relish in my role as a big sister, not just to my younger sister, but also to some of the other children in the family who were also either foster children or the children that were part of the in-home daycare that she ran. I remember one of our family friends, Aunt Rose, who I call, saying every time she came over, I was always holding one of the babies. And so I knew even then I wanted to be a mom, and having Mrs. Johnson as an example just really made me want to do that, just the care and attention she gave to us and the time that she spent with us. There was a lot of us, and she was a stay-at-home mother, and she did the majority of the work and caring for us. And as one of the older kids, I would help her. And it just made me feel important, it made me feel loved, and it also gave me hope. Even though I felt like we were family and we did things together, like going to church and even vacation, I knew that my sister and I were waiting to go back home, and that was emotional and hard sometimes. You can only imagine the suspense and not knowing if you're gonna go home, but when. What really kept me grounded, and something that I had learned from the Johnsons a bit indirectly, was faith and having hope with faith. We would go to Sunday every church. We go to church every Sunday, and I remember learning about different stories from the Bible, and one of those stories was about David and Goliath. And I remember I just really fell in love with that story. First off, because I was 7 when I first learned about it, and I knew that David was 7 at the time when he had to fight Goliath. And even though it seemed like a pretty far-fetched story, I really took to heart him having to fight this giant. And me finding the parallel of feeling like foster care was this huge giant that I felt like I had to conquer. I didn't know how to fight it, but I knew in the end that David prevailed. And I felt like if I could be like David and just be faithful and stay the course, I felt like too I would prevail. And so learning about having faith and treating people with kindness and respect, that was just one of the many things I felt that I learned from the Johnsons. Sorry, I'm a little emotional, I just had a baby, so everything makes me cry. So, as we were waiting to go back into care, one of my favorite memories of being with the Johnsons is when we went to Disneyland. And that was a really exciting time. Every kid wants to go to Disneyland, right? But the timing couldn't have been any better. I found out that my mother had lost her rights. And that meant we weren't going home. And that was very tough for me. We had been in care at that point for 2 years, and I remember I would say my prayers every night to go back home. I would also at Christmas time ask Santa, as well as the local charity that gave us presents. They would ask us what we wanted the most for Christmas, and I said to go back home. That was my wish every year. And of course, when you're that young, you don't understand the logistics and everything that it takes for that to happen, but that is the one thing that I wanted other than candy and for my younger sister to listen to me, was to go home. And so going to Disneyland, it was just so much fun. I actually went back 5 years ago, and I don't know if any of y'all have been to Disneyland, but up until that point, it had been a good 20 years since I had been, and it was just exactly how it had looked like when I was a child. And spending that weekend with Mrs. Johnson and my sister and my cousin, as we walked around Disneyland, we didn't have a ton of money, so we got told no a lot whenever we wanted something. But just to be able to go and have fun and not have to worry about everyday life, it really made me again feel hopeful, but so much more connected to my family and to a future, right? Because to me, that's what Disney represents. It's not only fun and hope, but possibilities. And that's what having a future is about. We did end up leaving the Johnsons and we went to go live into a foster to adopt placement, which had its challenges, as every family does. But for what it's worth, I was very fortunate that the Johnsons were able to remain in my life as extended family. And with them being able to be extended family, we were able to go back and visit them. I would call the Johnsons whenever I could. And sometimes I would find myself complaining about my life, whether it was my foster home, my sister, other things happening. And my foster mom, she would never judge. She wouldn't even say anything, but she would listen. And after I would get off the phone, it was just so interesting that I would just leave going, you know, things may not be going my way, but that's okay. And just watching her example on how to be respectful towards others and be grateful as well, I really felt as though those were things I was able to incorporate in my life, even when I found myself going through trials and tribulations as a teen, and even when I entered into adulthood, knowing that there's something to always be thankful for, and that I just wasn't a foster child. That was something that I had learned from the Johnsons, and that I was somebody, and that in order for me to be somebody, everyone else doesn't have to be a nobody. We can all be someone, and we all belong, and we all fit in. And that is something that I have learned from them. When I was 18, I actually went back to live with the Johnsons. I couldn't wait to be on my own. And I had called them up and I said, can I come back and live with you? And they said yes. I felt very fortunate in that they were able to open their home again to me. This time as a young adult. And with that came were challenges that I had never experienced before with them from when the time I was a kid. I definitely had my own personality and my own opinions and how I wanted to spend my time. But that was probably one of the most fun times though, was living with them, not as a child, but as an adult, and learning to relate to them in new ways. And one thing I would always do is talk with my foster parents, and I would ask them all sorts of questions, and they never were annoyed by me, which was something I had experienced sometimes when I would talk to other adults. You know, I just wanted to learn about the world. I had it in my heart I was gonna be a journalist, a consultant, I was gonna win a pageant, and I was just all over the place with, you know, everything that I wanted to do, but they would just sit there and listen. They'd be like, okay, Jamaica, don't be running in and out my house, you know. So that's all they ever wanted us to do, was just to be home and to feel safe, but to also, you know, make sure that we minded our manners. You know, one thing I never had the opportunity to do was to ask them why they became foster parents. They have both since passed, and a unique fact is that when my sister and I went to go live with them, they were in their golden years. They were already in their 60s. And so we used to make fun of sometimes because we lived with older parents. I'm still a little surprised about that, because I feel you should have respect for your elders. You know, they have a lot of wisdom, and the fact they've lived so long. But my sister and I would get teased for having older parents, and people didn't think they had anything to offer because of their age. But I learned so much for them on, first off, how to be myself and to really go after my dreams. One thing I saw that would often hang on their wall was a plaque that the local foster parent chapter gave to them, and it was an appreciation award. And on it was actually this quote that I have to my right. And I remember reading it, and I was 18, I had just moved back, and after I finished reading it, I just thought, wow, that's sappy. You know, and I was also thinking about how, well, I don't know if that's true. I'm like, most people, they don't know what they're talking about, because anytime we asked, you know, Papa and Mrs. Johnson, could we go to McDonald's, we always got told there was McDonald's at the house. So, and so I was like, I don't think they know what they're talking about. And I was like, well, it's nice they gave them the award, they put up with us all these years. And now that I'm older, I get what it means now. I'm not that, overly confident 18-year-old who thinks only my world makes sense, what happens in it, but I really understand what that quote means and what the Johnsons did. And actually, when my grandma passed, that's what I call Mrs. Johnson sometimes, as my grandma. The Foster Parents Association of Washington came to her funeral, and they actually gave her this big, huge plaque. It was bigger this time, and it was ivory colored. And I remember just thinking, how much I miss her now still. And that, like I said, I never knew why they became foster parents, but them being in my life, and my sister's life, they most certainly changed it. When I came into Mrs. Johnson's home, I was nonverbal. I had speech delays. I didn't really have a strong sense of self. I faded into the background, which is something y'all might be aware of with some of your kids. And they were really worried about me, but being in Mr. and Mrs. Johnson's home, I really flourished. I started being able to speak. It was still a challenge. Aunt Rose would often tell me, I just come over there, you just be trying to talk, but you just wouldn't give up. And I didn't realize that. And it's amazing to have been both a print, a television reporter, and to see the investment they made in me and how that just allowed me to come alive and really find my voice and sense of purpose in life, which is to be a communicator. That was something that I always wanted to do. Even as a child, I knew that I would be on stage talking to people about what, I wasn't sure, but that was a vision that I had and something that I felt very connected to, and something that I felt I would be always able to do. And apart from being that change maker in my life and making that difference, they also taught me about letting go. It was no easy feat to go through, having my mom lose her rights. But when we moved from their home to other foster homes, just to see the incredible strength they had in letting go and helping us adjust, I really admire that now as an adult. I'll be honest, in my younger adult years, that was very hard for me. Why didn't they adopt me? Why didn't they do this, that, and the third? And that's a part of life, is saying goodbye and letting go, and just to see them do that with such grace and presence. That's a lesson I didn't know that was there, but I'm thankful for. And I'm just so thankful for them, and I miss them so much, but I know because of them, I am the woman I am today. I'm a mother to an 8-month-old, and just seeing the way I mothered my son, I know a lot of that came for them. And just the spirit of resiliency and being someone in the world, notwithstanding title, but just existing and just being a joy and help to others is something that I take as a lesson that I live every day in my life. I just want to say thank you all for being here this morning, and I appreciate you listening to my story. Thank you for being here.
I know I speak on behalf of all of us. Your story and your advocacy gives hope, right, that families will have a chance to foster and adopt children and give them that place to feel safe. Thank you so much for being here with us. At this time, let's welcome our Associate Commissioner, Gail Gahagan-Pratt. At LCFS, Gail's been instrumental in shaping policies that keep children safe and help strengthen our families. So, Associate Commissioner Gail Gahagan-Pratt, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone, or have we transitioned over into the afternoon yet? So happy to be here with you, and thank you, Commissioner Miles Gustav, for the acknowledgments. I also want to make sure that I acknowledge some key persons of the team that help to be able to do this work that we do. So Associate Commissioner Renee Halleck and Director Carol McCarthy. And I just want to say, Jamaica, thank you so much for sharing what you have shared with us today. The vulnerability, the openness, the transparency, and I think it really lends itself to sort of what I wanted to talk about, which is what the role of foster parents and kinship caregivers can be, and what it is that children really need to thrive. So sort of like the McDonald's is at home, and I've been doing this work for over 25 years now. Don't do the math. I started when I was 2. And one of the things that I have really learned is that what children need are not brand homes. They don't need brand name clothes. They don't need the latest gadgets. They want them, but they don't need them. What they really need are caring individuals in their lives. People who are willing to open up their hearts and their homes, to give them a sense of belonging, to kiss the boo-boos that hurt, to have the shoulder to lean on when they need a soft place to land, to be there to let them know that you belong, and whatever you need, I will be there. And to me, that's what our kinship caregivers and our foster parents represent. Persons who are filling that space when there is a need. In an ideal world, it would be great if we could put ourselves out of business, if there wasn't a need for child welfare. But we know that there are children that experience abuse and neglect and maltreatment. And so there is a space that we need persons to come in and be able to be that safety net for folks and that security that Jamaica referenced. And so we appreciate that there are persons who are willing to do that, to give of themselves, to open up their hearts. We know that it's not easy. We know that it's challenging, but we still appreciate the fact that folks are willing to recognize that there is that need and to fulfill it. Because there is a need. I just want to share some data with you. As of December 31st of 2022, we had just over 8,500 active foster homes in New York, with just over 3,600 that were opened in 2022 alone. Those numbers may sound like a lot, but as Commissioner shared, we had over 13,000 children that came in, that were in care. And these homes, they don't all stay open. We have homes that close throughout the course of the year for different reasons. Some close because maybe they adopted. Others close because life changes happen and there's just not the ability to continue to foster. So there's always a need for ongoing recruitment. And we have some of our voluntary agency providers that are represented here who are also a key stakeholder in this work that we do. And we know that they're very diligent in their recruitment efforts for foster parents. They do commercials, they do advertisements on billboards, community events. All of that is part of the strategies, but there's something to be said about persons who have fostered and the word of mouth, and being able to speak from personal experience, whether or not you have actually fostered. You've experienced someone who has fostered, you've seen the benefits of fostering. And so what we would encourage and urge for each of you sitting in the audience today and on the stage is to be that voice, to lift up the value in the work that foster parents and kinship caregivers bring to this space, to advocate for that, to share the need, and to invite others into this space to do this work. Again, we know that it is challenging, but as challenging as it is as rewarding as it is. Just to hear Jamaica speak in regards to what Mr. and Mrs. Johnson meant to her life and what they brought to her life. Who knew she couldn't talk? Started out, and here she is, very eloquently being able to share with us her experience. And that really underscores what kinship and fostering is about, is being able to provide and fill that space when, unfortunately, for some children and youth, they're not able to receive that from their home of origin. And so there is a need and there is a space. And we want to just continue to encourage those of you who are doing it, and also urge to spread the word in order to be able to bring more into this space, so that for those children who need that resource, that we can be there and have that available for them. So you will find that there is information on our website in regards to how to be a foster parent. I think we also have some brochures available outside the doors for folks to be able to take with you. But really just want to encourage each and every one of you to spread the word. For those of you who are involved in this work in the various capacities, whether you are an advocate with a voluntary provider, and of course for those of you who are actually fostering, thank you. We appreciate and value you, and just would really welcome you into the space to continue to work with us in terms of being able to bring more persons into this work, because it is something that is needed and we appreciate it. So thank you.
Again, thank you, Gail. Associate Commissioner Gahagan Pratt. How lucky are we to have Gail on our senior leadership team? She's a soldier in this work. And for those who may not be aware, our Deputy Commissioner, Lisa Garcia-Ogundimo, has decided to leave us after an illustrious 12-year career. And Gail Gahagan Pratt will be the acting Deputy Commissioner for Child Welfare and OCFS. So, thank you, Gail. Now, let's hear from some of our community partners who we know do so much of this hard work, as Gail mentioned, on the ground. They help provide safe spaces for our children. We want to first bring up Pat O'Brien, the Executive Director of the Adoptive and Foster Family Coalition of New York. They help unite foster, adoptive, and kinship care families, giving them a voice, providing support, information, and advocacy. Please, Pat.
Hey, you always think you know what you're gonna say, but then I heard Jamerica, and now I have a little switch. You know, somebody gave 3 different people over the course of a year and a half gave me a nice little saying. The first time I got it was on a plaque, and I read the saying, and I was very unimpressed. So when the person left my office, I just sort of filed the saying under G for garbage. I was not impressed with what the saying was. Then I get somebody who gives me a card about 6 months later, the exact same saying. And they wrote something nice on the inside of the card. So I'm still not impressed with the saying, but I kept the card because of the nice thing they wrote on the inside. Then I'm at a conference where I'm getting an award. And on the middle of the award is the same saying. And I'm thoroughly unimpressed again, but the person who gave me the award was a friend of mine. So I asked, I go, so are these like the awards you get, like 6 for $1 or something, and that's why I'm getting this saying? And of course he was very insulted. And what he said, no, when we saw this saying, we thought of you. And that's probably true of the first 2 times I got it. And for the people that might be watching from the outside, they didn't see the saying, or because it was so small on the screen. But now I keep the saying in my wallet, and it's so worn that I hope I can read it out loud. And the saying was, 100 years from now, I will not matter how much money was in my bank account, where I lived, or the type of car I drove, but the world may be better because I was important in the life of a child. A child. Now, the reason why I was not very impressed with that saying all 3 times, until my friend explained it to me, because I said to him, 100 years from now, every kid that I help is as dead as me. Why do I gotta be reminded of that? And then they really explained the true meaning of it, and that is once you show some kindness, some effort, some parenting, even if it's a few weeks, that could change the course of not just the child that's with you, but the next generation. And the generation after that. We've had so many experiences where that was a job where we were placing kids on the verge of aging out of foster care into permanent families. And people just say, well, why would you do that? And the reason is for the next generation, and the generation after that, and the generation after that. And then somebody gave me a quote on the reverse side of this, and this is a surprise, I didn't even know it was there. And the thing on the reverse side is when you save one child, you save the world. So, I don't know how many of you here are thinking about becoming foster parents. We need foster parents at the exit end of the system. We need foster parents at the entrance end of the system. At the entrance end of the system, we need you for emergencies. We need you to accept children who don't even know you. Every time a child's moved, it's a trauma for that child. But if that child has to move into a home where they previously didn't know you, or you didn't know their family, it's so important that that child never has to move again unless they're going back home or back to their family, back to their network, back to their people. And I'm hoping that every child that moves into your home at the entrance end of the system can go back to their family, their network, their people within 90 days, even if they can't go directly back to the impacted parent where they might have been removed from. It's so important that kids don't move from place to place to place, to home to home to home. So what we try to do here in New York State, I'm talking about the Adoptive and Foster Family Coalition of New York, where I'm the executive director. We want you to feel free to be in touch with us any time of day. We have a 24-hour helpline where you can talk to another foster parent, another adoptive parent, another kinship parent, anytime you need to have a chat. Sometimes it's difficult to get your caseworker, sometimes it's difficult to get your county worker, but we'll always be there for you. And then there are other things that we offer folks in terms of support. A network of other families that might be struggling with their kids, and hearing how they cope, how they manage, how they stay committed while the good work of helping a child return home is being done. We also have an interesting parenting classes, because I'm talking about parenting classes after the kids move in, after the children might be driving a little bit nutsy, to understand why it triggers us. Because the way our parents parented us, that's not the way we got to parent children of loss and trauma. And it's so good to be in a network of families and hearing great ideas. And that's available. Again, every family in the state of New York can do that through us. Even in the area of therapy, we got special funding, because the best therapists who understand foster care, adoption, trauma, attachment, and loss are very, very expensive, and most insurances don't accept them. But we have at least arrangements now in Long Island, New York City, Hudson Valley, and we're going to be working on other parts of the state as well, where we can at least get you 5 sessions with a quality therapist. So we're here to support you. We're peer support, parents helping parents, and that's what the Adoptive and Foster Family Coalition is all about here in New York State. And we got our papers outside. I encourage you to learn more. I'm sticking around. So hopefully, I just wanted to let you know a little bit about how we're here, how we help, and how we stop the bouncing of children from one place to another. Because it's very, very hard to raise children who just lost the people that are most dear to them, and they're with you at the worst time in their life. And that time, you're going to need support too. But remember, you can influence generations because you're doing this work. So I thank you all for being here and doing this.
Thank you, Pat, for everything you do for all the children and families in New York. Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, we have friend to the agency, Bill Getman. Where are you going, Bill? Bill Getman, CEO of Northern Rivers Family Services. Northern Rivers does everything for their community, so we're so appreciative of all the work they do. So without further ado, Bill Getman.
Going after Pat O'Brien is a hard thing to do, because Pat is a zealot for foster parents and adoption and kids and families in the state. It's proud to be here. We have staff here, we have foster parents, so kudos to every foster parent, every adoptive parent, kinship parent, and everyone who makes a difference in the system of change that we're trying to produce in New York. I'm one of those old people, like your foster parents, the Johnsons. I remember when foster care had 55,000 kids in care. 55,000. Now we're down to a very small number. And I want to give credit to OCFS and the governor's office and the legislature for looking to create new innovation, new reform to make the system more responsive to the kids who need care, but also need a permanent place to go home to. So kudos to you, Commissioner, and to Gail and the governor's office for your effort to relook at all the parts of the foster care system, make some investments. So foster parents are one part of the solution for kids, right? There's another component. It's the staff who support those foster parents at 2 in the morning when the foster parent doesn't know what to do, or they need a respite weekend, or perhaps the foster child drank something or ate something and they just didn't know what to do. And that's the caseworkers out there every day who provide support to the families and to the foster parents and to the children. So I want to give a shout out to the workforce up there. But we have to do more for the workforce, and the commissioner knows and the governor's office knows that there is more that can be done to support our workforce. Because what we do know is every time that a worker changes in a child's life, the length of stay goes up by 6 months. That means a child is not in a permanent home. They haven't found their permanent future. They're sitting in foster care, which is not always the best place to be. So I want to encourage everyone here to advocate for full funding for our workforce, full funding for our foster care system, and of course, let's celebrate the success of what foster parents do. So this weekend, graduations are starting everywhere. Kindergarten graduations, middle school graduations, high school graduations, and college graduations. Foster kids are graduating because of the work of foster parents and the support we get from the state in terms of funding for grants, in the SUNY system, and the community college system. So when you're at your high school or your college graduation, you see kids walking across that stage and tossing their tassel. You got some foster care kids in there. And the reason they're there is because of foster parents who made that extra effort to get them across that stage. So celebrate graduation, celebrate your foster parents in your community, keep giving back. So thank you for what you do. Continue to advocate, continue to care, and continue to innovate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us today. I want to thank everyone who joined us today in person and virtually for sharing your story, sharing your passion, and helping us recruit more foster parents. So thank you so much. If you are considering becoming a foster parent, just know we have information here. We have our partners here. Feel free to reach out to us at OCFS or your local Department of Social Services. I want to thank all of our team, right, OCFS, for creating this wonderful event. We have our Public Information Office who put this together. Thank you, PIO. Folks in the Commissioner's Office, thank you so much, and our lovely Child Welfare Community Services staff. So thank you so much for coming. We remain your partners. Feel free to reach out to us. Yay, Foster Care Month.